Okay, hello. Today I want to speak a little bit about a yoga routine. How to motivate yourself, how to build a yoga routine. And there are like a few sections I will go through, and I hope that in the end we also can do a little mantra together. Let's start with an and a little grounding, so please close your eyes down. And take 3 deep, juicy, sweet breaths. And then come to a natural flow of breath. Just for a couple times, observe how the breath enters and leaves your body. As in remembrance to that aliveness flowing. And if you want to join in, please inhale through the nose, exhale, and inhale for an Okay, and blink the eyes open. All right. Okay, so today I keep it a little bit shorter because if anyone wants to watch the game, England is playing, then they can still make it. We speak about how to build your routine or your yoga ritual or your practice. And practice is a very crucial part of yoga because that is kind of the body of it. We have all things that are describing yoga and philosophy, for example. We have all those concepts, we have all those words for it. But in the end, the body of it, like where we experience, is the practice. And so we want to also do the practice and not just speak about it or not just make ideas and concepts. And in order to create a practice, there are some recommendations, but there are also different kinds of practices. And I want to take a little journey through that today. So first of all, we have to ask for the motivation, the question of why. I asked that some of you guys in the meditation workshop, but why do you practice? What's your goal? What's the aim? And that is very personal and individual, and everybody has to answer that for themselves. But yoga proposes that you find, so to say, the biggest why, and you follow that. So you search for that highest principle that you have in life, and you orient on that principle. That is your direction to go always. So your practice will align to that principle. What you believe as that is the highest principle I carry with me. Because yoga is not just for fitness or being healthy, yoga is kind of going to the fundament, to the very foundation of why I'm here, what I'm doing with this life. And that's why it's also asking quite intimate and strongly for the why. Why do you live? Or why do you do things? And So this is an invitation for everyone to contemplate on that and sit down for maybe a weekend. So I remember I did that. I went to Denmark. Unfortunately, Henrik is not here, but I went to Denmark and rented this small house just for a weekend for myself, like from Thursday to Sunday. And I had the only plan to recenter and figure out, what do I do with this lifetime I have? And that was very helpful, because there was no distraction, and I had a walk every day, and it was on my own, and it was very important to be on yourself and to sit down and take yourself the time to figure some things out. And you don't even have to go and have an answer in the end, but it's great to make this little journey. And you also don't need to wait until you start your practice to know what your why is, or let's say the highest principle you strive for, your intention. You can already start earlier on. You can take the next best why and then go with that and see if that's good enough. But the idea is actually to work on the why. And in yoga, they have some ideas about the why. And we call that the pure motivation. And pure is not always understood correctly. It's not that it has to be like a very noble, ethically correct motivation why you do practice or why you do yoga, but pure in the sense of it should be really honest and really true for you. That's your highest value or goal or principle in life. So if you would be religious, that could be God, for example. But if you're not so much into religion, it can be also much more simple to just be present or just be loving or whatever you think is as the highest principle of this reality. So think of that a little bit, and then everything else will align underneath that. And that's important. Sometimes it sounds a little bit like heavy to have or to need a why or a highest principle, but when you know that, you can direct and ask yourself, every time you do anything in life, you can ask yourself, is that aligned or does that support my way towards this highest principle? And if it doesn't support it, then maybe it's just for fun on the side, and that's all right, or it's just not the right direction you're walking at the moment. So that's why there's this big, deep self-inquiry of like, what do I want to do with my lifetime? Or what's the truth about all this? And in yoga, we call this awakening, the journey to to embody the highest principle. And the highest principle is, in yoga philosophy, not living outside of you. It's kind of inside, or let's say it's everywhere, it's everything together. So we want to first find that pure motivation. What's the downfall when you don't follow a pure motivation in your practice? It is that you're motivated from outside. Let's say your motivation is to get fit. It can have many different reasons to get fit, but if being fit is motivated by the outside society or the world, and you actually don't care so much about being fit just because people expect you as a successful person to be fit or to have a six-pack or to look in a certain way or something like that, then it's not really your goal. And what happens is that you cannot maintain your practice because the motivation, the energy you have is not enough, is not good enough. And the yogis say if you find the pure motivation, you will always have enough energy to follow your practice. Maybe the practice changes in some senses or in the way you execute it, but you will have enough to follow through even in the hard times. And that's when practice gets really important. And that's when practice drops if it's not pure motivated. So if your aim is to lose 10 kilos, when will your practice drop? Latest? When you lost 10 kilos. Then the practice is gone. And that's all right, maybe, because you have achieved your goal, and then yoga was a means to lose 10 kilos, and that's all right. So we can use that as that too. But if you actually want to make that into a lifestyle that sustains you on long term into a healthy, enjoyable experience of lifetime, then practice is part of that and wants to have a motivation that is deeper than just from the outside. And there are many outside motivations. And it's also all right to follow them for certain parts of time. But if yoga gets more central in your life and you have that yearning for answering that big why, then a pure motivation helps so much. And in yoga, that would be the idea of awakening, in other terms of getting to know who you are and learning to enjoy that. That would be the idea of pure motivation. Are there any questions so far? So when you know I made some notes here. When you know your motivation, then it's more easy to keep a practice and to establish a discipline. Because sometimes discipline is needed, and it's nowadays not anymore so valued. I think a few years before us it was much higher valued, and nowadays it's a bit like I just do what I want. Nevertheless, if you want growth, you have to do things regularly and repeat it over and over again. And therefore you need discipline, because not every day you're motivated to just get out of bed. Like your energy is not always there, let's say, even if there's a motivation. And sometimes you have to make the first step to sit and start your practice in a sense. And we call that in yoga tapas, that fire that keeps you moving and doing. And it's a very crucial part. And in Tantra Yoga, we also want quite to encourage discipline, but we want to keep it as a soft discipline or a gentle discipline. It's almost contradicting, but it means you still follow a discipline, but if it doesn't happen in whatever way, because life comes into and kicks you out of your routine or your plan, you still adapt and you follow that whatever comes spontaneously. So you're not mad when your discipline gets screwed for some period of time. You kind of soften into the flow of life, which just happens and is normal. But you still have the discipline of doing it repeatedly, regularly. And discipline leads to we get a stimulation, and that is also important. So when you actually want to go deeper into a certain practice, let it be asana or mantra or meditation, you have to repeat that. I guess everybody knows that. But when we want to grow in a certain sense towards somewhere, our highest principle, or any other goal, then we need the stimulation. But in yoga, we want to be a bit more careful. We don't want to push beyond our limits, but we want to push towards our limits and almost touching them, because the stimulation is needed for growth. So you can imagine that like a muscle. You need to stimulate it, not too little, but also not too much, otherwise you get sore muscles, just in the right way, and then you want to have a pause so it can recover and grow. And so in that way, stimulation is needed to go deeper into whatever practice. And then over time, you get more refined and you find deeper layers of the practice. That's why it's so important to keep that regularity. And it can only be kept if your motivation is true enough.
What do you mean by regular routine?
Yes, regular routine. Actually, I mean daily routine. But from my experience, I couldn't maintain a daily routine for years. So for me, it's like on and off in waves. It comes and goes, but it has to have those periods of daily routine. Sometimes it lasts even for some years, but at some point it drops. And it happened always in my life that this daily routine dropped at some point. And that's a very normal pattern, I believe. But to pick it up or to change your practice then, because it doesn't fit to you anymore, to change it then into a new way of practice. Because you want to remind yourself daily of your highest principle. You want to be reminded of why do you spend this time here? Because the highest principle makes you happy in a sense. Sometimes it doesn't feel like it, or it feels like I'm still on the search and I'm not finding it, and I do it for years, and that's frustrating. But the alternative is not much better. The alternative is being lost and not knowing what to do. And that leads to depression or even more frustration. Or to, So, and it will happen at some point that there will be a shift. When you follow that pure motivation, there will be the shift coming. It's almost inevitably. If you have the will and the action, then it will happen. There's no way around. You cannot choose the point where there's the switch of it just clicks in, let's say, but it will happen. That it just becomes natural and beautiful. So and also when you get more towards pure motivation, practice becomes beautiful and joyful. Not every day, but generally it makes you feel better and it makes your life better, because life is your measurement of your practice. If your life gets really, really bad and worse, maybe you're not doing the right practice. So life and contentment are the measurements. And not necessarily the daily, but the overall arch of how beautiful or intense your experience of life is. There is a question in the chat. Let me just read that. I understand what you mean by discipline not being so valued anymore, but I slightly disagree. My experience is that most people want to be more disciplined in their lives, but they don't know how because they have no role model to follow. Whenever I reveal the areas in my life where I implement discipline, I find that people are almost in awe of that. Okay, I agree on that too. It's not taught anymore because whatever reason, who knows. I started doing martial arts, and in martial arts, discipline is quite more present. And in my whole life, it served me so much to have the ability to tap into discipline if I want to. But I started in my teens and in my 20s to follow discipline in a very rigid way, meaning I wasn't taking care of my body or of my well-being or of my mental space, and I was just pushing through. And that also doesn't lead to a more healthy, balanced life, and also not necessarily to a happy life. So that's why I say discipline has to be also applied in a gentle and soft way, or let's say compassionate way, because you still want to maintain a healthy lifestyle, and the highest motivation or principle is always loving. I mean, maybe not for everyone and every time, but generally it's always loving because it's life affirming. And so that's why I'm saying soft. It's a soft approach to discipline. It's still sitting and doing the stuff, but it's not judging afterwards or during it so harshly. It's still doing the stuff. Persistence, yeah, is another word. Good. Okay, so then going towards a practice. We want to practice a technique for amount of time, and I would suggest minimum 21 days to go into depth of practice. And that is helpful if it's daily, but it can be also like maybe every second day or something. Depends how intense it is. So when you do practice every day for 21 days, your neural pathways start to bind or to come together, and you go into depth of the practice, so you discover different layers of practice. And even better is 40 days. The cat brought a bug. Even better is 40 days, or in yoga, they love the number 108, so why not doing it 108 days? And that is really, really strongly recommended, because then you really get to know the practice. And then you also need that time to get the benefits from it. If you try something for 3 days, you won't get the deeper benefits of it. So you have to first have a leap of faith into that practice, whatever that might be. And then you have to test it for yourself. But keep it doing for a bit longer period of time. And also, after 40 days, you are having that in your routine. Your body is kind of known to that, and it's more easy to continue then and to follow. Yes?
When you say a daily practice, is there like a length, a duration that you recommend doing?
Yes, I come to that.
Yeah.
Okay, so how does a daily practice look like? Okay, wait, I want to say one more sentence before that, yeah? I made a little bullet point here. No, it's good. There's one more point why we should also include a practice in our lives, a yoga practice, meaning specifically, because when we go through our modern society, we are very overstimulated with all kinds of stuff. And that is mental programming, emotional stuff that is very out of healthy balance, I would say. And physically, we're also getting a lot of shit into our bodies if we follow mainstream food, for example. So to get clarity in the mind and to find pure motivation or our highest principle or walking towards awakening, we need to cleanse first. Cleanse the mind, all that bullshit, all the emotional stuff that's sitting somewhere, and cleanse the body. And that's why it's so important to do that practice too. And that first period of your practice will be a cleanse. And then the actual practice of, let's say, the more spiritual part of the practice starts. Before it's a body cleanse, we have to declutter the mind completely. That's why meditation is so great. And that's why physical practice and movement is so great. Because it's this decluttering, detoxing, the inner cleanup. Okay, now to answer your question. So, we have two kinds of practices we want to speak about, and that is one, the formal practice, and then the second, the informal practice. And let's speak first about the formal practice. I have a suggestion for you guys. I would do the formal practice first thing in the morning. And we were speaking about times, or who was it?
Me.
Yes, the times recommended are 4 to 6 o'clock in the morning.
Okay.
I think I have done that never, maybe in Vipassana. I'm not that early morning person, but what I did for half a year minimum, I did wake up at 6 and did my practice every time at 6. And that was beautiful. Because there's nothing else which already has bothered you. No phone, don't look on your phone first. And you start your practice and you're so fresh after your practice and you feel like newborn. But evening is also okay to de-stress, but morning is a good recommendation towards sunrise at some point. And then there's an order which I would recommend now, and there's a time which I also recommend. So the yogis have a different time units, how they count the time. And they counted the day in 30 units. And if you divide that day, it's 1 unit is 24 minutes. And for whatever reason, that's how they did it. So in many scriptures, it's just recommended to go with that unit. So the minimum practice would be 24 minutes. I say the minimum practice is 1 breath a day, because that's your little reminder of living more consciously and following your highest principle. Reminding yourself with 1 conscious breath, I am here, I'm present, I'm breathing, I do my practice. And that is so easy that you can maintain a daily practice so easily, effortlessly. Remind yourself of either your search for the highest principle or of your highest principle in your life. So 1 breath a day plus the reminder of the highest principle. If you want more, do more. And why not doing 24 minutes? Or in terms of 24 minutes, doubled by 2, 48 minutes, or 72, 69. Okay. Okay, yeah. And that could be a good timing. And of course, you don't need to be rigid about that. Except if you sit down for meditation, be rigid about it. Stop your meditation and do it until the bell rings, because that's the discipline you want to build. And that is escaping the tricks of the mind. If you just sit down and say, oh, I meditate a bit, then some days you will maybe meditate for 15 minutes and some for 2 minutes. And you want to go past that mental tricks to get you out and back into the mind world. That's why in meditation, I would highly recommend to use a timer and to sit until the end of the time. So before you decide how long, then you set the timer and you sit until that. Secondly, choose a meditation technique before you start and only do that technique. Or if you need to switch because you feel in the first 1-2 minutes like, oh no, it's the wrong technique, but stick to that technique, to one technique. Because again, the mind loves to trick. And when you have like 5 techniques in your repertoire, it will jump from 1 to B to C to D, E, whatever. And that's not how you build strength of concentration or how you build discipline or how you go deeper into something. If you have a mantra meditation, you change mantra every 10 minutes, you will never get more depth in your mantra. And the sequence I would suggest to practice is 1, start with honoring your highest principle or remind yourself of your highest intention or ask for that principle to come. So you can also say, okay, I don't know what my highest principle is, but I want to know it. So there's the willingness and there's the willingness to also listen to it. So you want to find it and you listen to it. And that can be also, if you don't have it yet, you can just ask for those 2 things. I want to know my highest principle and I'm willing to listen. And then you're just quiet. You just do the question and you don't look for the answer. That's also possible. And, or if you already know your highest principle, might that be awakening or whatever, you honor that. And that's the first little step. Well, little, but super important. Secondly, when you're a bit deeper into the yoga tradition, you can also do a little mantra, we would maybe say a prayer, but it could be also a mantra, which benefits you and your current state in life, or which protects you, like a protection mantra. And then you start with pranayama, just for a few minutes. That is good because it focuses, it centers, it brings you into the present moment, and it sets the practice and your mind. 3 to 5 minutes pranayama, and then you start your asana practice. So that is the first bunch of a bit longer practice, meaning yoga flow, movement, so you work your body, and you also cleanse physically. That can be, for example, 24 minutes to 48 minutes. It's a good time. 48 minutes is quite a nice time for asana, especially if you have meditation and so on. You don't want to have too long asana because then you're like 3 hours in the room. If you have nothing else on the day, then that's fine, but otherwise. After that asana, I suggest do an extended pranayama. That's your real pranayama practice. The other one was just setting it for asana. Now you have worked the body, you want to work the breath. In best case, you already worked the breath in your asana as well, but now you want to deepen that because that's the introduction to meditation. You setting the energies into the right flow. That can be 15 minutes or 5 minutes or 10 or something in between that. That's what I usually do. And then you want to do meditation. And that's kind of the core of your practice, because that's where you can enter closer towards that states of truth, according to the yogis. And that can be another 24 minutes, for example. It doesn't need to be super long. 24 is great, like 50 minutes until the mind is calmed down. You have 10 more minutes to rest and awareness. But you can also meditate longer. Instead of doing it too long, like 90 minutes or something, you can do that for periods, but if you do it daily, I would rather suggest make it shorter and do it 2 times a day, morning and evening. For me, I find that a bit more beneficial. You could wrap your practice after the meditation, but you could also continue to study yoga or contemplate or journal what's going on in your life, because you're in a very relaxed state. Mind is not overactive. You're quite closely connected to your inner being and to your deep self. So now having a journal is actually quite nice, because you can get better insights because you're already quite relaxed. And then eat something. We're still at the morning. And that can altogether maybe take 2 hours, but you can adjust that. And you can also drop parts. So which parts do we drop? You drop whatever you want, of course, but I would never drop that honoring of the highest principle, what you did first, because that's super important to remind yourself. And I wouldn't drop so easily the meditation part. But if you, depends on which stage you are. If you're in a very deep cleansing process, maybe meditation is not the first thing your body needs. Maybe you sit the whole day, then asana is what you need more. Then do the asana practice first, or prioritize that. And drop the meditation if it's not time in your life. It's totally valid and possible. And maybe you don't need the asana so much because you're anyway active during the day, and then drop the asana and just do a bit of 5 minutes pranayama and meditate. And maybe you don't need any of that. And because you integrated so well already in your life, and now we speak about informal practice. You remember formal practice, informal. So formal is you make a plan, you stick to that plan, and you do that every day. Informal, or another way for it would be spontaneous practice, is when you are not planning your practice, and when life comes in and throws you into a situation and you start to realize, oh, this is an opportunity for practice. And either something comes spontaneously, oh, I learned about this, and you apply it, or you make a pause and you consciously say, I have my 5 minutes of practice now, quick meditation. Or you just follow your intuition and say, okay, I have the feeling practice wants to come, so I practice. That's my practice. I want it to come spontaneously. All right, so spontaneous practice or informal practice, Om Namah Shivaya, is when you follow intuitive what wants to come through you at that moment of time. And it is reminding yourself during your daily life to your practice. And maybe you practice compassion, or you practice unconditional love, or you practice whatever, kindness, or you practice mindfulness, and you just stop for a second, take those 3 mindful breaths before you send this email, and that's your practice. Good. Questions?
Would you recommend practicing the same asanas every day, and like the Śavāsana series? I mean, this has meditative
Absolutely, yeah.
part to it, and that way you don't have to make decisions all the time.
Yeah.
Right? About which
Yeah. So the question was, would you recommend the same practice every day, asana practice? I would say yes, but not infinitely long. Change it at times. Change it into another series. And specifically, Ashtanga series 1, I wouldn't recommend so much, but it's not bad. But it's a lot of forward folds. And it's a lot of chaturanga, so it goes heavily on the shoulders as well. I know 80% of practitioners that have problems after a few years because Ashtanga motivates you to push beyond your limits. So I consider it as a very advanced practice, yogic practice, because do it, but without pushing across your limits. If you maintain that, then Ashtanga is good. But 90% cannot do that, and they are just pushing too much. But that's great. It depends a little bit on your sequence. And if you would ask me, or if we would have like a one-to-one session and I build you a sequence, I could build you a sequence that keeps your body healthy. Just to explain it very shortly, I would put in that your spine twists in or moves in all directions. It can, because that's important. And if you do a practice which only goes for forward folds, and you only do that over a long time, for years, then it's not so beneficial at some point anymore. So I would build a yoga practice that is just generally healthy for you. And then you can do that every day. Nevertheless, it's still good to change your asanas after a year or two or something, or even after a few months, and do another flow. Yeah, because the body loves new challenges. That's how it grows. But it also loves to have the time to grow. Yeah. So if you're a football player and you play your whole life football, it's very good occasionally to do some yoga or to do some other sports, climbing or whatever, because you suddenly use new muscles. It's also how the brain stays fit. If you only do the same thing, so what is needed stays, and what is not needed slowly declines. So that's why you want to go broad always at some points a little bit to keep everything used. Yeah. Is there any more questions?
Can I ask one about the highest principle?
Yeah.
Okay. So is the theory that there's one individual highest principle for every individual, or is there like a unified one that everybody strives for, like unconditional love that you mentioned? And the second question, can that principle change over time?
Okay, thank you for that question. Do you guys hear that at home? Okay, so he asked, is the highest principle universal or individual, and can that change over time? So now we have to see from which perspective I answer. If I answer from the perspective of a tradition, every tradition formulates one highest principle, and that's not individual. That's kind of they saying, this is the highest principle, but you can feel it by yourself. You can discover it by yourself. And once you did, you will agree that this is the ultimate principle, because they say it's not about individual, like I find that better and you that better. We're speaking about truth, the absolute truth. And there's only one absolute truth. So in yoga perspective, it says, strive for that absolute truth. Once you found it, there's no question anymore. You found the truth behind everything, behind reality, your life, your being. And once that is clear, that's the only goal. So just strive for that. Strive for truth. And they not only say truth, they say truth and absolute freedom, because they come together, they are one in the end. And in modern language, we translate that as consciousness. That is consciousness. That's the absolute truth, because yoga philosophy has that foundation that we are that. We are the truth, we are consciousness. But if you're not so much into tradition, or if you don't want to believe that, or if you just want to make up your own thing, Well, no one tells you not to do that. And you can just personally explore the world and reality and see, like, what is for me truth? And what do I believe in the most? And okay, that's for me, that's what it is. You create your own little religion. Yes, but yoga has this answer of there is a truth. And it formulates it and says that is consciousness. And we want to awake to that. Yeah, basically that. And there was a second part of your question, no. Can it change? Yes. No, it cannot change, because once you found the ground of your being, it's so clear that that's it. Okay, so that doesn't need to be a change. Because, but if you have a belief, and that's the difference. See, religion often is making people believe and not experience, unfortunately. And the belief just stays as long as you believe in it. But in experience, if you have a full body experience, you cannot deny it anymore. I mean, your mind can still be skeptical about it. Like, I don't know if I'm here, but it's very clear. It's in front of your eyes. You're breathing it every second. So it's like, okay, that's it then. It's too clear to the question of change is not there anymore. The mind still has it. That's fair. The mind.
Don't be too skeptical, but of course you can make people experience something so they believe in what you want.
Oh, that's great. Yes, that's great. That's a good. That's why skeptic is welcome. And in yoga philosophy anyway, it's like ask until you have no doubt anymore. And that's great, because you also don't want to only have one high and then believe in a new God or whatever, you know. So you want to be sure, and you want to breathe it every second. That's why I say that. It's not only one occasion or one specific state you're in. It's undeniable. It's like the fish in the water. There's everywhere water. You cannot unbelieve water anymore. You cannot fake it, you know. And in the end, you don't know. Like, you cannot be sure about anything except that you are. Okay, Yasmin asks or says, for asana, I like following a teacher, either a live class or online on YouTube. How do I reach a point of building my own sequence for asana practice? I think I'm ready to be somewhat independent in my practice. Yes, do a teacher training. Do a teacher training, because you learn how to build your sequence and you learn how your body functions. And so you can build endlessly sequences and you understand what does what. How do I build a sequence for more strength, for more flexibility, for more inner peace, for whatever, for more energy in my body, for more calming, if it's a good teacher training. Other than that, just do courses or listen more to me. No, I actually don't speak about how to sequence, because 80% would be probably bored. Maybe not. Maybe everybody would be interested. Maybe I should do that. But then I would do a teacher training, and I do that. So please come back. October. Yeah, maybe we do one in Jordan, and you join. You host it. She was here 2 weeks ago or something, and she convinced me that Jordan is a great place to make a yoga retreat, and I really like to go to Jordan, so maybe we make it happen to make a retreat in Jordan. Actually, there's an answer. I think that if you've been practicing for a while, you probably know a lot of asanas, and you should just give it a try. Yeah, that can be also good. Like, just go intuitively, try your own thing, and follow what feels nice. Better is a teacher training, because you know if that's healthy or not, but normally if you listen to your body, you will know. But if you're more in the mindset of pushing, then not always you will know. You will know too late when you're injured. Any other question? Anyone? Guys, I'm really grateful that this is happening here. This Wednesdays. I know I should do it on Sundays because everybody voted for Sundays, but to see a few of you, or even read the names and be in touch, it's great. It's very nice. Ulrike, you were also here. When was it? 3 weeks ago? No, 2? No. When was it? 5, 6 weeks ago. Oh gosh, time is running. Okay. There are no questions, then there's mantra. Oh. Okay. Original sound. Loka samasta sukhino bhavantu. A few times. Loka samasta sukhino bhavantu. Please repeat after me. Loka samasta sukhino bhavantu. And please stay muted. Not that I don't like, but there's a delay, and then we have a choir. You're allowed to sing for yourself, but for your neighbors. May all beings in all realms be happy and free. That's this mantra. Okay, namaste. 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 Bye guys, lovely to see you.